Our team coverage continues now. The host of Facing South Florida, Jim DeFede, is joining us now. And Jim, Democrats and Republicans are both calling on President Biden to do something about Cuba. Realistically, what are his options?
You know, that's an excellent question. There has been a lot of arguing and yelling, demanding that the White House do something. You heard Joel's report there from the street. You know, there aren't a lot of options for the president. Now, one of the issues that has arisen is you've heard Senator Marco Rubio, the governor, and others talk about that the White House should do more to bring internet access to the island. I have to tell you, in even talking to some local officials, Republican officials, as well as looking into this myself, this is a lot easier said than done. There is no switch that the Biden White House can just flip and turn on internet access on the island. In a lot of ways, you saw a press conference today with the governor, with Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, creating a false expectation that there is this easy solution that the Biden administration can do to just come up with internet access. You know, they've identified certain mysterious companies that you know, sometimes they're willing to identify them, others they won't. They won't talk about how much it will cost. They won't really even talk about logistically how it can be done. The governor has talked about trying to put up some sort of a satellite tech, you know, that some private company might launch or repurpose or retask to do it. But again, this is a very technical idea. That they often cite that this was done in Puerto Rico after the hurricane. Well, there's a big difference. The Puerto Rico was a U.S. protectorate. As a result, you know, you can build even temporary infrastructure there, have the sort of balloon technology that they used in the island there to bring partial internet access. So that's not realistic. Now, I realize I'm going on a bit about the satellite and the idea of internet access because this has been the main thing that so many people have criticized on. In a broader way, I would tell you that, you know, I think that the Biden administration has already spoken out about this issue. They've issued, not only the president has spoken out loudly himself, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, the Coast Guard. I think what you're likely to see, though, in the coming days is maybe more from the White House, maybe inviting some Cuban Americans up to the White House to meet with them, talk to them, give some sort of a speech. But the expectation of Joe Biden coming to Miami anytime soon and that will have an impact in Cuba, I don't think is realistic.
And Jim, earlier this afternoon, we heard from White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki saying that communism is a failed ideology. We want to know, in these last few weeks, especially looking at what happened in Surfside, there was so much unity and coming together of people from both sides of the aisle. Why aren't we seeing that with this just yet?
Yeah, this is truly disappointing. You know, I believe it was on Tuesday, the governor held a roundtable discussion, and the only people invited to that were, you know, among elected officials were Republican elected officials. Then the next day, Democrats had their own roundtable discussion. Again, only Democrats elected officials were brought into this. This shouldn't be a Republican or Democratic issue. You know, this is something that both Democrats and Republicans should stand shoulder to shoulder on, is freedom in Cuba. That's something that we all want to see. And yet somehow this is being made into more of a political issue, and that's regrettable. You know, it's an easy whipping point for the Republicans against Biden. At the same time, you know, the Democrats can sort of point to President Trump and say that the former president should have done more during his time in office, both about Cuba and when it comes to Venezuela. So a lot of this becomes that political football that you talked about, but it shouldn't be. And let me make one last point. Really and truly, I believe, and all the experts tend to agree with this as well, that the problems in Cuba can only truly be fixed by the people in Cuba. It is not something that the United States or any other country can solve. We can offer assistance, but at the end of the day, it's the Cuban people, what you've seen of the Cuban people, that are really making a difference and will continue to do so.
Jim, I think we have some breaking news on this. I'm going to let Lauren.
Yeah, the president has been speaking at a press conference, and apparently he's just said that the U.S. is considering if they have the technological capabilities to reinstate internet to Cuba. He just said this within the last couple of minutes. Of course, we're going to stay on top of what he's saying right now and bring it to our viewers as soon as we get it. But Jim, as always, thank you so much for your insight.